Good evening. Welcome to the Troll Tribune interview series on Bold Like a Leopard. I'm here talking to somebody who has a lot of familiarity with trolling. He's active on the other 99% logic. Very important last word, logic. That's a page on Facebook. They do a lot of parody work on some of the popular liberal share sites. His name is Alex. It's Ioannidis, right?
Ioannidis.
Ioannidis, sorry. And recently, me and Alex have been locking horns over what it means to be conservative, what it means to be, somebody that's for small government. I think we have vastly different perspectives. First of all, Alex, why don't you talk about yourself, what you're doing right now, how you started to work with the other 99% logic, and some of your recent big events in politics.
Well, I used to be a democratic socialist, and thanks to PragerU, I'm now a conservative. I have some really conservative positions when it comes to economic issues, and I still have some more liberal, not even liberal, just moderate when it comes to refugees and like immigration and those types of concepts.
And recently, I do know that last week you were featured on the show. It's the Dennis Prager show. It's broadcast nationally. I only started listening to Prager probably, I want to say, in the winter. He always struck me as more of a person who's for mature audiences, and now I'm like just flabbergasted. There's so many people younger than me. I'm in my 30s. There's a lot of people that are suddenly listening to his show and watching his, and through his videos, they're getting introduced to conservative radio, which I was very surprised. I didn't know that something like this would happen. How did you come across that series, and what was it about it that really got your attention and got you kind of hooked on it?
You mean PragerU?
Yep.
Well, I was on YouTube. I think I was actually going to watch Saturday Night Live just as kid. And you know how it makes you watch these ads now, you can't skip them anymore. And a PragerU video came on. It was called How Socialism Ruined My Country. The country was Brazil. And I was like, this is interesting. And I just watched it. And then I had seen PragerU once before. I was like, oh, these guys are radical. They support a $0 minimum wage. And I didn't think much more of them. And then I saw that. And I was like, I like this. So I went and started watching more PragerU videos. And I was already becoming more conservative because I was taking economics and reading some books at the time. But yeah, those like put the nail in the coffin. They changed my views on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a strange experience. I went through it myself. Growing up, a lot, the people that view my channel wouldn't know this, but I had like a strange fixation with communism. I used to like draw communist, the hammer and sickle in my textbooks, and the teachers would like look at, because I was like a crazy bookworm. I'd go to the library, I'd read all about the Cold War and whatever. And then eventually, I think what happened was that I started to, in fact, I think George Orwell was part of the reason that I started to get disenchanted with it, because I did read Animal Farm, but it was a much longer process than what you're talking about. I think it took, I couldn't even tell you. It probably took 8 years for me to really, get detoxed from socialism, as I call it. What would you say was the main argument that had you switch from democratic socialism? Because there's plenty of people who still say that we're in a system that needs more state involvement in the economy in order to be an equitable society.
Well, let me tell you a few videos I watched. So I had always like I had seen how socialism failed. My family's Greek, like we're reaping the effects of it. And I mean, Greece is in a mess, and they keep like the socialists there are buying off enough people to stay in power and screwing over everybody else. But I just kept saying to myself, you know, those countries just did it wrong. We can do it right if we just elect Bernie Sanders, because Bernie still supports personal freedom, even though like he wants a bigger state government and federal, really, for him. And I just started watching. I saw that video. I was like, this guy in Brazil in 2002, I don't remember his name, was basically like Bernie. Uh, and he was hip and cool, and all the young people loved him and all of that. And he ended up destroying the country, and his successor made it even worse. His successor, I think, was Russo or whatever his name was. He was just
Khrushchev, yeah. She had the first female president, right?
huge trouble. He was like in jail, I think. But then it was like, so I started looking at more of Bernie's ideas, like universal healthcare. And I clicked on a PragerU video about it, and it's like universal healthcare is basically like the VA. And because I mean, that's literally government run healthcare, and the VA is so inefficient. Or, but I also look at hospitals in Greece, like uh, over there, there's like, you have to bring your own bed sheets if you go to the state hospital. They're a crappy service. Or in Canada, where my uncle, he he got a like disease that almost killed him, and then 8 months later, the doctor could see him, and that disease went away, and they don't know what it is, and it could come back, and I mean, it could be worse next time. So, yeah.
So a lot of I'm seeing that what really happened was that the PragerU videos kind of jived with a lot of the personal and family experiences that you had, or anecdotes that you had from family. I think it's I think with me it was a much longer process because I had to hear about it firsthand. But now that you've already, so to speak, crossed the line between your previous beliefs and your current ones, are you getting more and more engrossed in reading about? You're a business major, right? So reading about these economic theories behind free market capitalism or Marxism, is that kind of a focus of what you do at school?
Not yet, but I like to research that on my own, and I keep a very open mind. My news sources are honestly very centrist. I watch the only thing I really watch on Fox News. I watch Tucker Carlson because he calls out bullcrap from anywhere, and I watch Sean Hannity because Sean Hannity, biased as he is, he's the only person that will tell the news from the president's perspective. And there's an old verse in Proverbs. I'm paraphrasing this, but it basically tells you in a nutshell to listen to both sides because both of them sound right. So those are the only things I'll really watch on the news. And when I read the news, I read the Wall Street Journal and The Economist, which are very moderate. The Economist is a little bit left of center, but barely, while the Wall Street Journal is a little bit right of center. So I mean, they're very moderate news sources.
So I think we see here like a real area where me and you diverge, which is I go and I look for sources often that I think that are both biased and close to the action. There's, first of all, on YouTube, just like you discovered Prager, there are a few sources that I started to discover last year that are much more, I'd call them dissident, and they don't fit into either party. They fit more along this cynical axis of people that they try to say, we have actors on a stage here, and it really is a stage. You have two parties. They appear to be giving you two different propositions, but when the real deal making comes, that they're actually offering a deal that they've already come up with. And in many cases, they're just trying to posture in certain ways in order to make that more palatable to the voters. So that's kind of the perspective. And I'm really, bringing it into an abridged and condensed version. That's kind of the way that I've come to see it, and that's why I've stopped watching most mainstream media, Fox News included. I've started to think people really have to piece together everything from all of the perspectives, even perspectives that I don't like. I watch, for example, the Jimmy Dore show, which is a very far left show. Lee Camp, which is a far
I
left.
love Lee. I do watch Lee Camp.
Yeah, Lee Camp. I think that I was
I
listening to.
agree with him half the time, but I just love how he goes after Democrats too. It's funny.
Well, I like it that he's very yeah, I think he's very willing to go and punch as hard as he can at whoever he thinks is wrong. And I was actually listening to him in the supermarket before I came back, and we started this. I think you need people with different perspectives that can just be kind of a megaphone for whatever interest they're for. Even and obviously I don't agree with almost anything Lee Camp believes in terms of policy, but I think he has the same sort of outlook on the system as it is that I do.
I agree with Lee Camp on one thing though. You know what that is?
Go ahead.
Ending Citizens United. He's right about that.
Yeah, I'm seeing like a real. That's funny. I think we did talk before one other time, and maybe you did mention that, but there are other people I'm talking to that they're really in favor of ending Citizens United, and it's on both sides of the spectrum. And
Yep.
if there are sides anymore, and sometimes I don't even know if there are sides anymore.
Well, they're sick of it though. You got leftist Democrats who are like, I'm so sick of all this dark money going to my opponents. And you also have right-wing Republicans who are also like, I'm so sick of all this dark money going to my opponent. It hits them both in their where it hurts, their wallet. And I mean, they don't like it. So.
At this point, I want to say hi. There's a couple of people in the audience that I know, Dean and Denise. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I don't know if we're going to have a lot of time for questions today because both of us have to go and do some other things. But getting back to your new stance as being a moderate, being a, would you call yourself a Republican?
Oh yeah, I will always vote. I will not vote for anybody who supports abortion and who doesn't support a balanced budget.
Okay, so those are your two meter sticks, right?
Democrat I could see myself voting for, or maybe Joe Donnelly.
So okay, we're talking now about your big your key positions. Those are budget and abortion, right?
I see it because abortion. I have it so high on the list because I literally see it as murder. I call myself pro-life, so I'm pro-refugee, against abortion, pro-immigrant, and also against the death penalty.
Okay, so which one of those positions do you want to talk about first? I think you did mention the abortion first, but I think that me and you won't have much to really disagree on that one. I'm very I think abortion is kind of I don't take as I am religious. I'm religious Jewish, but I think my position is more of a philosophical idea that the state should not mandate medical facilities to execute people that are obviously are not criminals or something. That's my position. I'm assuming yours has something to do with you said you're a Baptist a different time.
I'm a diehard Christian. I don't even like denominations because they divide the church. But I love Jesus Christ. But I can tell you this. I could make the case against abortion and for all of these things without mentioning my faith. I can just tell you how my faith plays into it in the end because I don't know what faiths people who are watching have. So.
Okay, so I think the next one we want to talk about is the refugees. Now, my problem with the refugee crisis is the idea that I don't believe that allowing refugees into your country will solve the crisis. Now, let me ask you this: why do you think that the United States or other countries, let's say Canada, should let in these refugees? I think you said that. I mean, do you want to discuss DACA, all those issues?
Let me talk about the refugees first.
Yeah.
I've seen them firsthand. This past summer, I was in Greece working with people who I literally crossed a boat. I was from Turkey over to the Greek island of Lesbos and are journeying through Europe. Those people were left because they were getting bombs dropped on their heads, literally. And I mean, we're on a live broadcast. I can't say too much for their security, like about where they were hiding, but the stuff I heard was life threatening. Like those people were literally running for their lives. It wasn't like, you know, we we're struggling here, so let's move over. Like it's like you're walking to work and a suicide bomb goes off across the street, something like that. That's the type of stuff these people have to live with. Or in Syria, you can't go out of the house because Bashar al-Assad just dropped a chemical bomb in the neighborhood. You have that type of stuff that refugees deal with. And they're not coming here to terrorize us. And there are a few arguments I get from populist conservatives that really that just are meritless and can be destroyed pretty easily. The first one of which is that, oh well, these people should just stand up and fight for their country. Which then I would ask the person, and I've never gotten an answer from this, but I always ask, who would you fight for if you were in Syria? Would you fight for Bashar al-Assad, who gasses his own people with chemical weapons? Or would you fight for ISIS, who is backing the rebels and is trying to take over the country? Because those are your two realistic options. There isn't like a good side to fight for. The best side in that situation is with the Kurds, who want their own country. But again, if you overthrow Assad, as evil as he is, you're giving ISIS a window to take over the country, which is what happened in Iraq after they got rid of Saddam Hussein. The other big argument, though, you got people saying stuff like, oh, well, they come to Europe and commit terrorist attacks, and that's what'll happen in America. Look at the terrorist attacks that are committed. They're never done, not never, but almost never done by refugees. They're usually done by people who were born in that country and raised there and became radicalized. One time, I told that to a conservative one time, and he said, tell that to the people who got blown up at the Ariana Grande concert. Well, the guy at the Ariana Grande concert was born in the UK. I mean, that they are homegrown, nationalized people. The refugees aren't out to do harm. They're out to save themselves. There's a sense of hopelessness in the refugee community from what I've observed. And I think it's the right thing to do. Not for the government to say, okay, we're going to pay all your expenses, but just for the government to say, you're welcome in America after proper vetting. And I do stress that we need to design our own vetting system that works. And then you tell them, you're welcome in America, and we'll let the churches take care of you. And also they get jobs. The people here in my hometown, they work at a chicken factory downtown. That's what they do. There's also one last thing about refugees I'd like to point out. There was a study done by Cato Institute, which is one of my favorite think tanks. It's very libertarian, and it's extremely conservative in the end. And they said that there was little national security benefit to Trump's travel ban because since the early 70s, we've displaced over 3 million refugees. And of those 3 million, 3 of them have been convicted of terror-related charges. And all of those convictions happened before 1980, before the era of modern terrorism. We let a lot of refugees in the late 70s and early 80s, and we really had an anti-refugee settlement over the last few years. And that breaks my heart. If you take those numbers, your chances of being attacked or hurt by a refugee in a terror-related charge are literally 1 in a million because you have 3 million and 3 of them have been convicted. While at the same time,
I think.
Let me tell you this. While at the same time, I'm almost done.
All right.
Your chances of being struck by lightning are 1 in 760,000, just to put it into perspective.
Okay. The Cato Institute. They've kind of been the bane of they've kind of made me go back from libertarian to being an independent again, because when you look at statistics, first of all, statistics depend on definitions. Okay,
Correct.
You have to define the variable. What is a refugee? What is a terror attack? Okay, You have to define those, and I think that And I could review whatever the Cato Institute put out for that, but the Cato Institute it's one of those organizations. It's a think tank. I usually don't rely exclusively on a think tank because the Cato Institute is a open borders advocacy group, and I'll explain to you why all the reasons that they gave you why they wouldn't accept refugees, what you call populist conservatives. They're really a side issue. The real issue at hand is what constitutes the real priority here. Is it in order to help the refugees and resolve the conflict that we're accepting the refugees? I don't think so. I think that's a complete smokescreen. And I'll tell you why. Because the more we accept quote unquote refugees, whether they, and by the way, a massive proportion of these refugees, and I put them in quotes, are not from Syria at all. A lot of them are from Central Africa, countries that are not at war. They're from countries that are, these are basically economic migrants, the same as the DACA debate, which, we'll touch on a little later.
Okay.
And this is an excuse, as it always has been, for these government cartels in the United States and the European Union to continue to import and often people that they can use to replace their own populations. In some of these countries, like the Netherlands, and I've worked for a company that was based in the Netherlands, they don't have huge population growth. So looking down the line 10 to 15 years, they're going to need a labor force in their own country in order to perform tasks that there simply won't be, Dutch people to perform.
I've heard.
And then we talk about the terror threat. I don't believe in first of all, why is it that you have homegrown terror in the United Kingdom? Will the refugee influx help mitigate that? I don't think so. It's causing a wealth of other problems that are not really terror. You're talking about assaults. You're talking about thefts. There's a housing crisis of massive proportions in the United Kingdom. The UK's National Health Service is already stretched to the bones as it is. And you're expecting them to absorb more refugees. Well, eventually that socialized medicine is going to collapse because that's uncapped cost. That they have to cover the cost no matter what. Tourism problem. So there's plenty of and I do believe in the terror threat, but the terror threat I think is not the main threat of allowing in endless refugees. So I propose, if you're willing to listen, a different issue, a different foreign policy. And it's not a Trump foreign policy either, although, I think there's a couple similarities, which is that we go to these countries and we say to their leaders, and the leaders of all people involved, and in Syria it would be Turkey, Qatar, Iran, Russia. We would say to them, if you guys want to stop having this bloodshed and this endless war, we have to remove all foreign troops with no exceptions. Everybody has to leave, and the conflict will have to resolve itself because the local belligerents, which would be the Syrian government and all the other fruit salad of militant groups that are there, they would have to resolve the conflict either through negotiation or through through attrition, which they've been doing till now. But when you have foreign actors involved in a conflict, the war can go on forever. That's what happened in Vietnam. You had the North Vietnamese government was constantly resupplied by Chinese and Soviet supplies. You had the same thing in Afghanistan. You had the same thing in Angola. Throughout the world, that's the way that you get these proxy conflicts to keep going on and on and on. So this refugee policy, in my opinion, is literally just an excuse for these governments to continue to supply weapons to this area. I think of all the countries that has a normal approach to the conflict. I'm not saying a moral approach to it, but a normal and rational approach to it that looks after its citizens. I think Russia is the one that has the best one. Okay, I don't think Russia is acting in the interests of arms contractors and security consultants and everything. I think they're actually fighting in order to keep jihadist mujahideen from their borders. Actually, if you think about it, jihadist mujahideen is a kind of a redundant expression, but I think you got my point. So, in my opinion, in order to really solve the refugee crisis, you can let in as many refugees as there are, and they'll still keep coming, because the interest for many of these economic refugees from Central Africa and from Northern Africa has nothing to do with escaping a conflict. I mean, the ones that you met or encountered in Turkey or in did you say it was in Greece?
Greece, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they may have had firsthand experience getting assaulted and driven from their homeland, but that is not going to solve what's going on there by letting them into Europe. In fact, it's going to cause a different conflict in Europe, because what happens if you look throughout history. Have you studied the fall of the Roman Empire?
I have not. Well, I know briefly about it.
Well, the so-called barbarian tribes that came and attacked the empire,
right.
They were fleeing from the Huns that were coming from Central Asia, and they had nowhere to go. They started attacking the fringes of the Roman Empire. Those were technically refugees, Alex. So in order to really solve this conflict, you have to step back. I don't think the Cato Institute looks at it from that perspective. I think they look at it from an economic perspective. So I'm not including them in this critique. But you have to put aside all of the emotional attachments and the real problems with the Assad regime, which believe me, I'm no fan of. But you have to look at the fact that all the proposals that allow refugees to keep coming into Europe, they're made by the same people that are allowing the conflict to continue the way it is. It's a proxy conflict. And I feel that in order to really resolve it, we have to remove all foreign troops from Syria, regardless of who they are, except of course for the conflict with ISIS, which I think is nearing its culmination.
Okay. I'm not a huge fan of having troops in Syria myself. I wasn't a fan of when Trump attacked their Air Force base. I didn't really see the point of that, and I don't think it did anything. I don't like going to war, actually. You know that. I'm really against it. Not to go too much on a rabbit trail, I would do something about North Korea, though, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah, I think with North Korea that most people who really look at it, I mean, I don't think that you or I would really have much difference on that. It's really that's like gone and become like a real international crisis.
But back to refugees, I've heard these arguments before, but I've read them on the internet. I have not heard them from other people. The most common argument I hear against them is terrorism, and I don't like it when they say that. That is really populist driven.
Yeah, but you have to put it into the
jobs, though.
Alex, you have to put terrorism into the mix, because the people how did this homegrown terrorism issue really become an issue? I mean, there's numerous reasons, and not all of them are related to refugees. So yeah. I agree with you that it's simplistic, but it's part of the whole arithmetic of it. If you let in more people that have the potential to become radicalized, and I think that people then in the West are I mean, look at some of the terrorists that have been caught that are they don't come from Islamic backgrounds anyway. I mean, so ending refugee resettlement would not end that. I think that's a deeper problem, the terrorism problem, that it overlaps with the refugee crisis. So I think you're right when you say, what about these British Pakistanis that have been there for generations and their children become terror operatives? That has nothing to do with refugees. I think you have a valid point there. But down the line, looking 30 years, the children of these refugees would be susceptible to even stronger urges because the community will be larger, and the same preachers that
I
were
won't deny that. This kid at the Ariana Grande concert was born to Libyan refugees. But at the same time, those are risks you've got to take when you're okay. This is subject to debate, but in my opinion, those are risks you've got to take when you're saving people's lives.
Well, what's the goal here? Is the goal here to save people's lives? Because I think that that's your goal, but that's not the goal of the people that are for refugee. The people that are the power brokers who are for refugee resettlement, that is not coming into the equation. That's sort of like when they sell you, low-fat potato chips, but it's crammed with salt.
Right. That's my goal because of what you call it, because of my faith, which I mentioned to you earlier.
Okay, so that can be your personal conviction, and I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to believe in terms of your religion, because I have plenty of beliefs that don't stand in convention with modern society either. But in order to really structure an argument around letting in more refugees, I think that the statement that it's in order to save people's lives, I think is too much of a blanket statement, because like I said, a lot of these refugees are not conflict refugees. The ones that you're talking about that you encountered may be conflict refugees, okay? And there are hundreds of thousands to millions now of conflict refugees because of what's going on, and I'm not going to deny that. But what it's caused is a chain reaction in other countries. There's people from all over the Middle East and North Africa and now Central Africa that are saying, well, there's this whole refugee thing. We can get our own boat to Denmark, and we can live basically a life that we could only have imagined where we came from. I don't think that that's going to solve the problems of the of the home countries. It's a numerical impossibility. That a country like Italy, which already has crippling poverty in southern Italy, by the way, southern Italy is basically almost a separate country. If you go to Naples and Sicily, you just see these piles of garbage and these crumbling public housing estates.
Naples was pretty trashy. It was kind of sad. I was shocked when I went.
So my opinion here, okay, and I don't know if this appeals to your faith or your rationale, is that in order to help anybody, we cannot let more poverty increase poverty in Europe, because it's wrong, in my opinion, to bring the misery of one country to compound the misery of the host country. And I think that the best solution, just like with Syria, would be withdrawing foreign troops. I think with some of these countries in Africa, where these people are coming from, Western Sahara, Morocco, Burkina Faso, you have to address the problem at the root, at the host country, at the home country, sorry, and not expect other countries to absorb those issues, because in my opinion, long term, you're just going to have these earthquakes along there. I mean, it's too fast of a change. You have to remember that Irish immigration here in America, it went through a lot of tumultuous eras. I mean, the Irish were first hated here because they were basically indigent. They were coming here. They were impoverished people.
You're right.
And it took generations for them to actually form institutions that could cope with the social problems that they were inheriting from their parents and grandparents during the
You're right.
It was with.
Hang on, I'm losing you.
Al, can you still hear me?
No, it's breaking up. I can barely hear you.
Let's sell out. I think we're gonna. How about now?
Could try again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. It's a little scratchy on your end, but I mean, nothing too bad. I'm gonna go and get some water. Is that okay?
All right, go ahead.
Like
Yeah, those of you that joined late while he's getting some water, this is Alex Ioannidis. He's working with this group on Facebook called The Other 99% Logic. I actually am part of that group too, but I'm not as active as some other people are. And he's a moderate Republican, while I am more, I'm an independent. I believe in a lot more conservative points. And we're kind of hashing out some of our differences in terms, in this case, the refugee crisis. Here, Alex is back. Can everybody, I'm going to ask the audience too, can people hear me better now? Let's see here, I don't see anybody replying. How about you, Alex? Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
So let's switch gears here. I think we've talked about our differences on, the refugees from Europe and or into Europe from the Muslim world. How about DACA? I think you've stated that you believe it should be sustained. What's your rationale for letting these unaccompanied minors stay?
Again, this stems back to my faith. I think it's the right thing to do, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'll back it up the other way. You got a bunch of kids came to this who were brought here illegally. The kids did not sneak across the border. Their parents did. They brought those kids to this country. You can't punish those kids for the actions of their parents. That's not right. This would be like if I get told tomorrow that I'm going to be deported because I was brought here illegally and I didn't even know it. And I've grown up in this country. This is my home. I call myself an American. I don't even call myself a Greek. I call myself an American. And it's wrong to let these people out. This would be, let me give you an example. It'd be like if the law required us to be married. It's weird. Like, would never do that, but just look at what I'm trying to get at. And I went and shot your wife, and then they went after you because you were no longer married. I'm the one who committed the crime. You know what I mean? That's the analogy. And you can't, it's wrong to punish these people. And then you also have the argument that they're working, they're part of our society, and they might hurt our economy. That's what the 400 business leaders were saying.
Okay, so I didn't quite get the analogy with the forced marriage. I think was, I had you for a second, but I think you lost me. But I think that with the DACA people, you can't let them just stay in the country. You would have to, and this is where I would propose a different idea than Donald Trump. If he was to deport them all, I think that would propose a few issues in terms of both logistics and the cost and the litigation and the lawyers and whatever and the stupid press coverage. But if people want to stay in this country, I think we have to give them obligations if they didn't come here legally, like real obligations that go beyond, let's say, registering for selective service like most young people do. Now, remember, these are unaccompanied minors, most of them that came here. I think DACA is those kids that they came across the border without their parents. And basically, my perspective is that they are the victims of policy again, and it's the same policy that was happening in Europe, which is very simply that you have politicians of both parties in America, just like in Europe. You have the Conservative and the Labour Party in England. They have no problem absorbing refugees as long as those refugees serve their ends. You know, they may be economic ends as cheap labor, or they may be political ends because then you have these identity politicians that go to them and say, you know, if you're a Salvadoran, you belong, you know, in the Labour Party in the UK or in the Democratic Party here. And I think that it's that the person that really I saw him as a real trailblazer was this Stephen Miller, who Donald Trump hired to be in the White House, and he said, you know, the points-based immigration system, we're going to stop, you know, talking about this whole notion that we are absorbing people that the other countries don't want. You know, they're what they term to be you know, dirty laundry in some cases, unfortunately, and it's not my terminology. Um, we're going to institute a points-based system, a merit-based system, where we'll have people from India and from Malaysia and all those countries, you know, let's say New Zealand, coming here. If you're a radiologist, qualified professional, you can come here, and we will support you coming here and contributing to the United States. But the other unskilled labor and all that, that's not the goal of the United States in order to absorb populations that other countries they don't care about. Then I'll tell you another problem with that. If you do you know who Vicente Fox is?
No.
Vicente Fox is one of the most prominent Mexican critics of the Trump administration immigration policy. He's the former president of Mexico. I think he was president when I was a kid. And he started saying, you know, his famous thing is that he goes on TV and he says, "We're not." Alex, you still there? I think he dipped off. Let's see if he can come back. Oh, wait. Alex, let me know when you're back. I still can't hear him. I don't know if he's talking. I think he lost the connection and he tried to reconnect. Let me see if I can message him and see what happened. Stay tuned, guys. He says he can't hear me. Can you hear me now? Resend the link. I think he'll be back in a second. Hold on. So let me just look at some of the comments. I see. Alex, let me know when you can hear me again.
I'm good. It's going great now.
So, okay, so Can I finish my last point?
Yeah.
So Vicente Fox, I remember him going on Conan O'Brien and saying that he spoke to people in Mexico who said to him that we've done all we can in Mexico, and we're going north to America in order to find opportunity. Now, think about that statement, Alex. Think about who said that on American TV. The former president of Mexico was saying that he thinks America should take in more people from his country because Mexico can't provide enough opportunity. Now, whose fault is that?
That's Mexico's fault.
It's the fault of him. It's him personally. Even I mean, Mexico. You can blame all of Mexico. I don't care. I don't have anything against Mexico as a country. I've worked with a lot of not from Mexico, more Central America. A lot of workers from there, and you know, I understand the rationale of people wanting to come to a country and you know, build a business or you know, raise kids with a good education, probably you know, party a little. I understand it. And it's perfectly fine. And I think that it's wrong. It's wrong for us to demonize the immigrants themselves, but it's right for our government to demand. And I don't care who it is, if it was Donald Trump or if it was, let's say, Bernie Sanders. If they were to go to those countries and say, look, you have to look after the welfare of your citizens, the citizens of Peru or Dominican Republic or anywhere else, and you cannot lean on the United States to absorb the misery that you as a country create. Now, I think that the United States, through its foreign policy, we've had kind of a footprint in Latin America, especially where we've caused some of this misery. But we can't just let these governments get away with this type of shenanigans and then say, well, you have to take our miserable people because we can't handle it. Vicente Fox is a rich man today. He's the former president of a first world country. Mexico is not a super poor country, and we have to hold them accountable, and we cannot let these open border policies allow our neighbors to get away with providing a subpar system for their own citizens.
Okay, but we can't control what our neighbors do. But I don't see the problem with letting them come to our country. I mean, America has always been a beacon of hope for people literally undergoing oppression, whether it was Puritans looking for religious freedom to Latin Americans today trying to escape from MS-13 and find a job, or to Syrians today trying to escape a bloody civil war. We've always been a beacon of hope. And we've always had this anti-immigrant settlement, even though we all started as immigrants. Like, you know about the Chinese Exclusion Acts in the 1800s, or you got the internment camps. I mean, this is not new to America either. It's not like, oh, well, to be fair to the media and to the right and to everybody, it's not like, oh, well, Trump's America has created an anti-whatever settlement. It's not Trump's America, it's America. And I don't like, humans are always resistant to change, but we've always tended to be resistant to immigrants.
Alex, if you go to every single one of those immigrant waves, one by one, okay, I'm not, like I said, I'm not blaming the immigrants from any of those countries for wanting to come here. But the reason that they were brought here, whether it was the black slaves or if it was the Chinese, it was to do jobs for a cheaper price than the local labor force. That's the simplest reason. Am I saying that I'm against low-skilled immigration? I think that it has to be limited. I think it really, really has to. It's creating at this point with the modern automated economy, which I'm part of. I work in an automation-related design industry.
That's what's killing us.
Well, we're reaching a point where we have to be realistic about the people that we already have here, and I don't care what, you know. There's people that come here legitimately from that there are refugees from conflicts. We had boat people from Vietnam that came here. Am I going to tell you that this is an immoral act to let in refugees? Absolutely not. But I'm explaining that the whole reason they want to bring in people from El Salvador and Honduras and Guatemala is for reasons that have nothing to do with humanitarian goodwill. It's a complete fraud, and it's always been a fraud every single time.
Is it because they want cheaper labor?
They want there's the corporate leaders, okay, and you know, I'm not somebody who's against business. I'm for small business. Correct. But when you have cheap labor forces coming in, you have people that, first of all, they don't have citizenship, so they're willing to work for less. Yes, absolutely, they're looking for cheaper labor force. And on the other side, you have a political movement, the let's just call them the identity movement, and they just need people that will come and be voters and sometimes demonstrators and
you mean like identity politics, like what Democrats do?
Absolutely, and that's why I think that and you know, if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that this was as big of an issue as it is. But I think it's proven to be a real problem, that mass population transfers in any country, doesn't matter what it is. If you talk about mass population transfers in Asia, you're going to have a massive conflict. Did you know that in South Africa, there's huge tensions between native South Africans, you know, I'm talking about black South Africans, and refugees from Zimbabwe that are fleeing from the Mugabe regime? That's the way it is. When you have mass population transfers, you are going to have social tensions and often anarchy. And that's why I'm firmly against letting in refugees, as opposed to pressuring these countries that they're coming from to desist from these policies that are causing the refugee crisis. And I think if we could formulate strategies to do that, and I think Syria would be an example where you'd have military disengagement that would help accomplish that. I think in countries where there is no war, it's a lot harder to do that. We can't just go to Mexico and say, hey, you can't keep doing these policies that are keeping people low waged and uneducated and basically ripe for illegal immigration. I think that it's much harder to go to Mexico than it is to Syria. It's a weird paradox of reality, but if you really think about it, we can't go and threaten Mexico anytime we want.
Make them pay for that wall.
What's that? Well, the wall is not necessarily. The wall isn't the type of threat that I'm talking about. Building a wall is basically, yeah, right. I mean, but we might as well bring it up. I think that building the wall is a statement from the United States. It's a statement. First of all, there's more than immigration at hand. The NAFTA issue has been a huge problem for labor in the United States.
Wait, you're against NAFTA?
I think that the way NAFTA was crafted, it's not free trade. And free trade is an illusion, the way that the Cato Institute and a lot of these quote unquote libertarian organizations portray it to be, because in reality, these countries can impose tariffs. I don't think Canada does it as much as Mexico does, but we have to think of the United States as a country that has to set itself apart from just global corporate control. It has to be a country that promotes the interests of small business and the individual, as opposed to corporate interests and you know, established capital. And I think that's the difference between these, you know, the globalists and you know, economic nationalists. I think it's obviously we can't go too far in the other direction, because otherwise we won't be able to do business with a lot of these countries.
I've gone for economic nationalist or globalist, but I mostly read The Economist. So
yeah, I used to read The Economist like probably every month or so. It was a while ago. So I've heard that they've changed a lot. They've become a little more concerned with social issues.
Yeah. NAFTA, we'll have to save that for another day. I can go on forever about what made me switch.
So let's pick on you know the big zit.
Before we
That's
go, I wanted to talk about healthcare though, and that can be a leader moderate discussion.
okay.
Is that all right?
Healthcare. Healthcare. Can I throw in a topic of healthcare?
Yeah.
Have you seen the news of the Kasich Hickenlooper
Yeah, that's
proposal?
exactly what I wanted to talk about. I read the plan.
All right,
I loved it.
so go ahead. Let's have you
Perfect.
start.
It's
I
not
can't see
everything
you
I
though.
wanted. What? Can you hear me now?
I think you're cutting out, or either you or me are cutting out.
Let me
So
reload the thing.
give
Give
me a
me
second. Alex,
All right, I'm back. Is it working now?
I can see you. All right, go ahead.
So the Kasich-Hickenlooper bill is the perfect example of compromise in what I want to see in our country, because it's not everything I want, but it's a lot of stuff that I do want, and it literally makes both sides happy, unless you're like a radical, because you'll have Bernie Sanders here on the left saying it's not Medicare for all and all of that junk, and then you'll have Mike Lee on the right saying this is not a full repeal of Obamacare, so I refuse to support it. And while both of them play their politics, people are suffering from exorbitantly high insurance costs that are bankrupting them. I mean, it's crazy. Obamacare, as Bill Clinton said, is the craziest thing in the world. And Kasich and Hickenlooper came up with a fix that a bipartisan group of governors. I'm trying to remember who signed it. I know it was Kasich, Hickenlooper, Larry Hogan, Terry McAuliffe, and I forgot his John Bell Edwards, I think his name is. He's from Louisiana.
Can you explain the fix, please?
Yeah, well, basically, in a nutshell, it expands a lot more power to the states to deal with Obamacare on their own and to get rid of different parts they want. Some of the Obamacare currently allows waivers to a lot of parts of its law if the state can prove that it's more cost effective, and they were saying that we should expand that. Another thing that they were adding in was a lot of risk pools. That way competition will increase with the 90% of people who don't drive up healthcare costs. And then that'll bring their costs down while you have risk sharing pools elsewhere. I don't know all the details. I just read I read through the summary, I guess. So it was about a 30-minute read. It was really interesting. But in the end, basically, this is the compromise. It keeps a lot of Obamacare, not everything, but a lot of the good parts of it, while at the same time, it gets rid of a lot of it gives a lot more power to the states to get rid of a lot of stuff they don't want or can't afford. Because Obamacare, the biggest problem with it, arguably, was that you have the federal government telling all 50 states, which are very different, how to run their healthcare, when that can hurt anybody from California who's trying to pass single payer to Alaska who wants government completely out of healthcare. And what this does, it gives a lot more flexibility to the states to do their thing. And it also, it basically gives the states a little bit of a subsidy, and then the states have their own healthcare budgets and can do their thing. That was it in a nutshell. And I mean, what is it my ideal plan? No, my ideal plan is to free up the market a lot more than they did and to ease up a lot of regulations, because that will tackle a lot of costs. But at the same time, is this plan better than Obamacare? A million times better. And is it good for the country? Yes, and I would totally support it if I were in the House or Senate.
All right, a couple questions. Is the individual mandate still in place?
I think they had proposal to keep it for the time being, and they did say the individual mandate is very unpopular. Let me pull it up. Give me a minute. I'll tell you exactly what it said about the individual mandate. They argued for keeping it, but at the same time, it was widely unpopular, and they acknowledged that, and they kind of wanted to change it.
Well, the point that I'm trying to make is not because I see in some cases, I think with DACA, you mentioned a lot popularity and poll numbers and everything, and that's kind of a way that I've moved away from using that as a reason to support or not support something. And let me explain to you why.
Wait, say that again. I was looking on the internet for this.
Okay, so in a lot of the you know, back and forth that I've had with you, you mentioned poll numbers and popularity of certain measures, and for me, that's not really the yardstick that I use. It's not at all the yardstick that I use to judge a policy, and I'll explain to you why. The core problem with Obamacare, which is not solved at all by this proposal or most of the proposals by the Republican congressional delegations, is that it is price fixing and it's corporate welfare. And it's done at the expense of the individual. That's why the individual mandate is so unpopular. So a person my age or a person who's 28 is forced to buy health insurance regardless of their own you know, their own decision-making capability. I mean, if they can't afford health insurance, they can of course go to Medicaid. Fine. Let's put Medicaid aside. That's a different debate for a different time. So you have Medicaid, you have people that are starting their careers, and you're saying to them, well, you have to purchase Obamacare. Why? To pay for millions of people that have pre-existing conditions, and you have to be in the same plans, the same pools as these people that are going to drive your costs up. And what happened with Obamacare? You had this flood of claims that started immediately when it came into effect, and it drove costs for the entire country up, because now you have this this subsidized market where these healthcare providers, they can basically compensate for all the additional Medicaid patients who are also they're leading these costs to skyrocket, because Medicaid, they can only charge so much. So what these providers did was they said, hey, we have to cover our costs some way. We're gonna cover it by screwing the people that are paying for their insurance. That includes Obamacare subscribers. That includes subscribers to non-Obamacare. So what this plan does, it doesn't change anything. In fact, from the Denver Post, which I'm reading, which is
Kasich and Hickenlooper's plan doesn't change anything?
Doesn't change almost anything. In fact, it basically is an agreement where until 2019, most of the things that are you know, attendant problems of Obamacare remain in place. One of the few things that the GOP claims is an advantage of it is that it gives some tax breaks to insurance companies. Now, me personally, I don't care about insurance companies. I don't care if they get tax breaks or not.
You're subsidizing them in an effort to keep costs down with the tax breaks.
Well, I think the subsidies in and of themselves are a problem, because what you're doing here is, first of all, it is corporate welfare, but in a certain sense, the insurance companies aren't the only problem. Now you have these providers. They can jack up the price of their service, whatever service it is. If it's like installing, you know, a third eye on somebody, whatever the hell it is, they can basically say, you know, because we have so many Medicaid patients, we're just going to jack it up even more, and that way we can cover our costs. So it's kind of a chain reaction, and what you get is a whole, you know, just a whole system of people that are robbing each other. You have the government is robbing the people who are not paying for insurance by charging them the individual mandate tax. Now, I believe Donald Trump has eliminated that, but
Can I read you what it says about the individual mandate real quick? I got it pulled up.
Yeah, go right ahead.
It says, keep the individual mandate for now. Finally, to prevent a rapid exit of additional carriers from the marketplace, Congress should leave the individual mandate in place until it can devise a credible replacement. The current mandate is unpopular, but for the time being, it is perhaps the most important incentive for healthy people to enroll in coverage. Until Congress comes up with a better solution, or states request waivers to implement a workable alternative, the individual mandate is necessary to keep markets stable in the short term.
Yeah,
this is the other
that's
missing out.
What you just read is meaningless, because that's what Obama was saying too. It's the same rationale that Obama was using. And honestly, if Obama had a good plan, I wouldn't have cared. I would have supported him. But what this basically says is,
it's healthcare. It's people's lives you're dealing with.
No, it's not just people's lives. It's people's lives, and it's their income, and it's their choice, and it's their and ultimately it's their freedom. And if people are forced to buy health insurance against their will or pay a tax, in my opinion, that is the government imposing conditions on the private citizen in order to achieve goals that have nothing to do with helping the public. In order to stabilize a market, that in my opinion, what difference is there between that and the way that they subsidize ethanol or any of the other industries that they do subsidize? In my opinion, that is the essence of government interference in a sector that doesn't need it. And who do I believe is behind this? It's insurance lobbyists. It's some of these organizations like the American Medical Association. They're pressure groups, and ultimately
they
the goal
will always be involved in our healthcare plans. There's no way to get them out unless you overturn Citizens United.
Right, and Citizens United, I think, is driving many of the problems that we've talked about today, whether it's the refugees or anything else. But I think we're going to wind down now. But this is one of the and this is why I need you to kind of understand that this is one of the reasons that people here in Ohio, despite what you see in the polls, there's not much that we see in John Kasich, and because ultimately, when you are all about compromise, that doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't mean a lot.
You know what will be our referendum on John Kasich? Your governor's race.
Yeah, but he's not good. He can't run for governor again.
I know, but Mary Taylor is.
And Mary Taylor, you can't run. Let me tell you something. John Kasich got elected twice, right? What are his main accomplishments as governor?
Balancing your budget. That's probably the biggest one.
That's but balancing the budget. So Bill Clinton balanced the budget for most of his term. So is that?
Yeah, and Kasich and Gingrich led the fight to do that while they had the House.
Yeah, but Bill Clinton made it a goal to balance the budget, and that is, and I'm the biggest. Look at this bookshelf. This is all about the Clintons. I'll concede that that's a great accomplishment of the Clinton administration.
Oh, you're right. Bill Clinton as a president, he was a corrupt psychopath, but he did some good things to the economy.
So then balancing the budget is a tactical idea, and I think it's a good idea for him to do it. But we're not talking about how he balanced the budget. Bill Clinton basically did almost anything the Republicans told him because they controlled government most of his time there. And Bill Clinton was literally a Democrat in name only when he was a president, like a modern-day rhino. And it was Kasich and Gingrich that sent him that budget. It really was, and they fought hard over it. And in the end, Clinton knew he was popular. And you look, Clinton won almost the entire country. He swept it. He won the South. I mean, Clinton was popular with conservatives because he was pretty conservative as a president. He was a great compromiser. And if it wasn't for his corruption, I would have voted for him. And because of his corruption, and because of his crime bill, and because of the repeal of Glass-Steagall, he's my least favorite president instead.
I'll put that into perspective.
Okay, so we have here, what's the big similarity? I mean, you said that his big accomplishment is balancing the budget. Now, it's like an accomplishment. I'll grant you that. But
A
why
huge
didn't?
one. Because remember where Ohio's economy was beforehand.
Yeah, but the reason that in Ohio you're able to balance the budget is because the Democratic Party, and I can't stress this enough, is completely it's exploded and fallen apart. It's like Humpty Dumpty here.
I
So
don't know about that. Obama
I,
did very well there.
yeah,
And Sherrod,
because Obama, if you watch these shows that I'm talking about, the Democratic progressive shows like
I
Jimmy
get you.
Dore.
He appealed to blue collar workers, right?
Hold on. Hold on. Let me tell you about the Democratic Party, okay? Barack Obama did very well as president for one person, Barack Obama. And the rest of the Democratic Party, he's wrecked entirely, and they'll acknowledge that now. There's states, West Virginia, that the Democratic Party is basically dead there because of him. It's dead. Ohio is another. What?
They have a Democratic senator and just elected.
It doesn't matter. That Democratic senator has to vote Republican almost half of the time, and that Democratic senator is he's under pressure now, either to defect or to step aside. There's Democrats running to unseat him.
And furthermore,
Joe Manchin is not the typical image of a Democratic senator.
You're right. But Sherrod Brown has a very good chance of winning next year. And you know the difference between him? He didn't go around calling everybody a racist and playing the race card and the women card and the you hate immigrants card, whatever. He supports all the same positions, but he goes out and he says, I don't support free trade. We need to keep our jobs here in Ohio. He uses populism, Bernie Sanders type populism, to stay elected. And I honestly believe in the end, Trump is going to end up being a disaster. Y'all are nominating someone like Josh Mandel to run for Senate instead of John Kasich. And in the end, Sherrod Brown is going to eke out a victory. That's my theory.
Well, why would you say that John Kasich is a better? I mean, first of all, John Kasich. I mean, what's the difference between him and Chris Christie? I'll tell you really quick, but I mean, let me ask you, what's the difference between those two guys?
John Kasich doesn't have the hot temperament of Chris Christie, for one, and John Kasich is a lot more conservative than Chris Christie was.
How is he more conservative?
Hold on.
Besides,
John Kasich never closed down a bridge to get revenge on a political opponent or a public beach that he went on vacation to.
Yeah, but those are public. Those are, first of all, the Bridgegate thing. What John Kasich has done here, he's had the Jobs Ohio organization. He's had his own scandals here that don't make it to the national media because nobody cares about them. We had a fertilizer spill in 2015. People talk about Flint, Michigan. We had a fertilizer spill here in Lake Erie. It caused a crazy algae tide because of a bunch of environmental regulations that John Kasich removed. So you know, the reason that what's the difference?
I saw that he signed a bill or something to protect Lake Erie about a month ago, by the way. But about that, John Kasich, there are a few conservative stances. Yes, he's extremely pro-life. He is a lot more economically conservative. He has shrunk government in a lot more ways than Chris Christie has. Chris Christie was basically a Democrat when it came to the pension.
Do you know why Chris Christie can't do anything that John Kasich can? It's a real simple answer.
Why?
Because John Kasich has two legislatures. The Democrats can only dream now in Ohio. Look at Ohio. Ohio is mostly rural. Hold on. I live here. Remember, I don't live in Jersey, so if you want to talk about Jersey, go ahead. But in Ohio, you have massive rural spaces. You have the Democrats haven't controlled the legislature for years. We've had a Democratic governor for 4 years since I think 1985. Okay, so winning in Ohio as a Republican is not as much of a challenge as it is in New Jersey, where Chris Christie's won 2 times. And I'm not a fan of Chris. I actually don't like Chris Christie more than I don't like John Kasich. So I'm not here to defend Chris Christie, but the difference is that Chris Christie has a massive union issue over there.
He was very pro-union at first. All the unions endorsed him.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
In 2013, he had a ton
there
of
were
union.
town halls of Chris Christie just fighting with these union, these union agitators, mostly teachers. And Chris Christie, he's had to deal with the Democratic legislature the whole time. So if you look at Illinois today, Illinois has a Republican governor who might even get reelected, but they're going bankrupt.
Ron is an awesome governor. Shout out to him, by the way.
What's that?
No, Ron is an awesome governor. Shout out to him.
But it doesn't matter if he's an awesome governor. The legislature controls the budget. The legislature controls the budget. So I credit John Kasich with finding ways to balance the budget here, but he's had favorable conditions the whole way through. Aside from one issue, Senate Bill 5, which was the right to work issue, he hasn't had any major challenges because the Democratic Party, due to corruption scandals, including people going to prison, has fallen apart here. He has virtually
let me tell you some unions that endorsed Christie. I'm reading them off now in 2015. Laborers International Union of North America, New Jersey Fire Chiefs Association, New Jersey Federation of Independent Business, not a union, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey Benevolent Association.
That's a police union.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't count. That doesn't count, Alex. Okay. The major unions are AFL-CIO. I know, I'm from a union family, okay? I'm from a union family. And the major unions are AFL-CIO. They are the IBT, International Brotherhood of Teamsters. And you have the AFSM, the AFSME, AFSCME, and the SEIU. Those are the major unions. And the what's it called, the ATF, and AFT, American Federations of Teachers, and the NEA, National Education Association.
Yeah, those are bad. Those are the worst.
Well, okay, but I'm not talking about good or bad here. I'm talking about strategy. Okay, we're talking about strategy here. It's not me like arguing against Alex here. It's me talking strategy. So John Kasich has been working in a state. So he had union opposition. What did he do when the union opposed him? He crumbled. He crumbled here. So we don't have right to work. So how has he balanced the budget?
He passed one and it died in a referendum, right?
Yeah, it died in a ballot issue that he hardly campaigned for because he realized that he didn't have the stones like Scott Walker did to risk a recall election.
And he's trying to pass one right now, right?
I don't think he's going to get it here.
But he was trying to. It's not like, oh, I don't support right to work. It's done. Like, he supports it.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris is trying to get, she's trying to get a single payer passed on the federal level, right? Kamala Harris, Kamala
Harris supports single payer. I don't understand the whole, she's not progressive. She's about as progressive as it gets, by the way.
Alex, what I'm seeing here, and I'm not going to, we can argue all night. But I think you're trusting the superficial image of a lot of these people. And, it's your right to support who you want. If you want to vote for John Kasich in, 2020 or whenever he runs, I think that you can vote for whoever you want. I mean, you can write people in. I was thinking of writing in, what's his name? I was thinking of writing in Chris Farley in 2016, a dead guy. So, I think it's your right to do it. But if you want to justify it, you have to go beyond polling and beyond, just personal convictions. I think you're like a business major, and I think if you really dig deep, and I think we can talk a different time. I enjoy having you on. I know that you're like really energetic about all the like gathering more information and formulating opinions. We could talk a different time about NAFTA or something. But if you really dig deep about John Kasich, I think you'll find that a lot of the big hype about him is very superficial, especially if you talk to people that are actually living here in the state. Yeah, I think he had a very good term in office, and he's going to go out of office with very few major scandals here. But that does not make somebody who's a real leader and has real proposals. And like I said, if you look at his proposal with Hickenlooper, it changes very little. In fact, it's the Denver Post, which is Hickenlooper's hometown newspaper.
Yeah, they're a liberal paper.
Hmm?
They're a liberal paper. They love Hickenlooper.
Right, and they said it's a Band-Aid and not a heart transplant, which is kind of what the healthcare system needs. So, in reality, I think that
Here, when you say that this healthcare plan is designed to stabilize market for this year until Congress can fix it.
no, I don't believe that the state. I don't believe that the government can go in and stabilize a market, quote unquote, without causing major costs and intrusions on the economy. Okay, and the economy means to the individual. You're going to see your premiums go higher, and it goes to the bottom line. And I do a lot of material on Obamacare. I actually did a video earlier on this plan. If you want to check it out later, but and the underlying point of the Affordable Care Act is to make healthcare more affordable. That's what it should have been. And President Obama, when he campaigned, he said he would bring premiums down $2,500 per family per year. Never came true, not even by a long shot. All those other promises that he gave, they've all been for naught. The keep your doctor, keep your plan, all that crap. And unfortunately, I think you're being a little optimistic about this governor's plan. First of all, the Congress has to approve it. I think if I was President Trump and I was gonna look at this from the side, I would pretty much sit on the bench and not even do anything. Say, hey, you guys screw with this however you want. You want states' rights to determine this? Fine, I'll get right out of your way, and you take this punch on the chin. And when the healthcare system goes to shit, he has them to blame. And I think that's really, if you look at the list of governors, most of them are term limited. The only other Republican governor on this list, besides Kasich, who's also term limited, is Sandoval of Nevada. These people don't have. What's that?
I like Sandoval a lot, by the way.
Okay, but what we're talking about here is political strategy. And
you're right.
These people are going to, they're going to, for the most part, not have to deal with the repercussions of their plan. These are 8 people. Not all 8 of them are going to run for president. You have Hickenlooper. I don't think he's going to run. You have the governor of Alaska. I think his name is Walker. Is not going to run. You have the governor of Montana. I don't think he's going to run for president. They don't have much to lose from this. So I think it's a lot of hot air, and I don't think it's going to work. So I'll let you have the last word. Then we're going to look at some comments if there's any, and then we can wrap up.
All right. The initial point of this argument, though, with Kasich was whether Kasich or Mandel was a better candidate, and this is why. Mandel has already lost a race to Sherrod Brown. John Kasich has a 57% approval rating as of the last poll. For a morning consult, it's pretty accurate. I don't see that going down anymore. I see it being in the high 50s, just fluctuating there. And I think a unifying figure that is not about resisting Trump and honestly has shown he cares about Ohio makes a better candidate than Josh Mandel. And I hope they can pass their health care bill. I hope that happens. And then Trump can just say, distance himself, whatever. It would probably be to Trump's advantage, actually, because Trump would literally be able to say he repealed Obamacare and people would buy it. And I mean, it's a Band-Aid solution to something that needs surgery. But a Band-Aid is better than nothing at this point. And then when it's time to have surgery, we can truly improve healthcare. And that's by getting government out of it more. I agree with you there.
Okay, so yeah, I think that's like a good closing point. I will say, Sherrod Sherrod Brown and Josh Mandel, two airheads. I actually know people that know Josh Mandel. Would kind of take, you're gonna probably have to be drunk to go and vote for him, but
I don't
yeah,
think he's that bad,
I'll get
but
drunk.
I mean,
I'll get drunk and vote for him.
Sherrod Brown is doing way more damage to this country than Mandel would do. That's the way you have to look at it.
Well, I think Sherrod Brown is he's got he's one of those people that is a traditional liberal. He's not quite a progressive, but he is a little more towards the Bernie Sanders side, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting. I think 2012, by the way, the reason he won by such a huge margin is because Barack Obama was and is to a large extent more popular in Ohio than the Democratic Party.
But it was a bigger margin. Keep that in mind.
It was a bigger margin, and I'll tell you what, that campaign was one of the worst I've ever seen. Josh Mandel just looked unprofessional the whole time. But it's been 6 years. We'll have to see what happens. If there's a better candidate, I'd support him. No, John Kasich wouldn't be better, in my opinion. Let's look at a couple.
By the way, for the record, Brown is one of the Democratic senators I like more because it's clear he cares about helping his state and his people. It's not about politics for him as much. I'll tell you that too.
Well, yeah, we could talk about that a different time.
I wouldn't vote for him. I'm not even endorsing him at all. I would vote for him.
I just don't have much to go on as far as that. So, Denise says, if you ever feel the need for a sex change, Dean, come out, hang out in Montana for a while. I guess they have subsidized sex changes there.
Well, government should totally pay for that. No,
and there's a lot of trash talk. France says, trust no politician. And he says, candy tastes great, but will screw you up eventually. But a medicine tastes like shit, but will help you in the long run. I think that was kind of a parable he was. Well, there's no questions. So I think we'll break for tonight. Listen, Alex, I like it that you're able to take the trash talk well. I think it comes from, working with the other 99% Logic team. Maybe next time we can talk a little more about that, how you deal with, the internet, looking for memes and things like that. You're part of it, right? And I'm actually part of the team too now. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, it's called The Other 99% Logic on Facebook. Are you with ODL too?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so, we're both, to some degree, we're on the same side, but we have plenty to disagree about, obviously. But thanks a lot.
Remember, we're on the same side.
Well, yeah, I think we still want. We're all about winning. We're all about winning. Can we agree on that?
Yep, we win big.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks a lot, Alex. Stick around for a second afterwards, and everybody in the audience, please comment on this video. Leave a few questions for the topic, and have a great night. This was Bold Like a Leopard.
See if we can share this on 098L.
Yeah, we can share it. Yeah, hold on. Let me go off air.
Hold on. Invite Quinn and like Eddie and David on here.